3, 2, 1. Welcome to the David the Dog Trainer Podcast, episode 164. And it's summer out right now, and you know what that means? The pollen is in the air.
Yeah, it's snowing outside.
So we have all sorts of things to talk about today, if I can remember them, due to the distraction of my allergies right now.
He is dying currently.
And I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm sure you can already hear that my nose isn't working.
Yeah.
Right? Very nasally. You know when you talk like this?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's funny, we went to Toronto for our seminar, which we'll talk about, obviously. And on the way there, Paige was, like, reading YouTube comments. And one of the YouTube comments she read was like, yeah, I forgot what they said. They said something along the lines of, like, I give people 2 sniffles, then I start asking questions or something.
Oh, my God.
like asking question, like,
Yeah.
you know, like...
Sugar boogers?
You know, little sugar booger action, stuff like that. So I promise everybody that I'm not on cocaine.
I just have allergies.
I just have allergies. That's it. So apologies in advance, because I'm sure we'll get plenty of complaints about my
Oh, my God.
sniffles and sneezes this episode.
Yeah. You were dying earlier. Yeah. And you were sitting outside. I was like, this cannot be making this any better for you.
I know. It's so counterintuitive because it feels like I just need fresh air to get past it. But actually, that's probably the last thing that I need is fresh air. I probably need like temperature-controlled air conditioning air.
Yeah.
That's what I need.
Some filtered air conditioning.
Yeah.
But
Josh, what's new? It's been 2 weeks. 2 weeks since we filmed an episode, guys. Last one was with the Shadow student.
Yeah.
It's been a busy last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
It's been a busy one for you, huh?
Yeah.
Same. I am taking photos of every HR group restaurant, which is Rosewood, Delmonico's, Blue Point, Cabin Club, Kingfish. We're just getting them all out right now. So it's been about 9 shoots in the last 3 weeks.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Super fun stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had a hot sauce shoot that got pushed back and canceled.
Oh, it got canceled?
I
remember you telling me about this one.
Yeah, it's supposed
finding the right peppers.
Yeah, couldn't find the right peppers, but we got the we'll reschedule at a later date.
Yeah.
And you know, I did the number one sin. I told him, don't worry about a deposit.
Josh, making the business mistakes.
Business 101 mistake.
Yeah.
So I'm hurting from that
Given
one.
the easy open door.
I sure did.
You know?
I just need new peppers, huh?
Mm.
Yeah, so that was my woeful mistake, but otherwise it's been great. So how was Toronto?
Toronto was awesome. So it's been a really, really busy last few weeks. So Shadow student left. I was out of town for like 3 days, just personal stuff, and then got back, and it was just fucking go time, man. We got back, getting everything ready at the facility before leaving for Toronto. We left early Thursday morning for Toronto, 5-hour drive up there. We were there from Thursday afternoon to Sunday morning, and it was so jam-packed busy. And the craziest part about it is there were 2 lessons that I actually didn't wind up doing that I was supposed to do while I was up there, that had those 2 lessons still actually happened, it would have been way too much probably.
Yeah.
First off, you ever been to Toronto?
I have not.
Huge.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's
like
huge.
Shockingly huge.
Yep.
Massive city. Mm-hmm. Horrendous traffic. So that was half of the battle, was like in between lessons, like going from one to the other was just like fucking crazy.
Murder, huh?
Right. So Thursday we worked with the client when we got up there. Little pity. We posted the video already, so you guys may have seen it already. It's Little Pity did training actually with the company that I wound up teaching the seminar at, and they actually referred this dog to me for just some brush-up work.
Yeah.
No major issues, but, and they did a great job with them so far. So I believe K9 Academy only offers, like, board and train services and then, like, group classes. They don't really do, like, a one-on-one option.
Okay.
So they thought this dog would benefit from some, like, one-on-one training, obviously. So, went and worked with this dog. They were just having some little issues, like, the walk was, like, good, but it wasn't as good as they wanted it. every now and then they would have like reactivity, which in comparison to what it was, it sounds like was basically nothing. I mean, their reactivity is like the dog gets a little overstimulated still when he sees other dogs, but he's not like totally freaking out, like going crazy, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So tweaked him through some mistakes, right? Helped him overcome some of those things. And then he was having a big issue with reacting at their TV, which you guys will see. We're going to do a separate video that's going to be like a vlog of the whole Toronto sessions and stuff that we did, which we'll be posting. And the segment on the TV reactivity will be in there. We obviously made the full single video on just his walking and the adjustments we were making.
Yeah.
So did that. Progressed to then the next day, we had the seminar, which basically what it was is K9 Academy does this apprenticeship program, right? They do it once per year. And basically what it is they gather a group of people that are either aspiring dog trainers or young dog trainers looking to grow their knowledge. And it's like a freaking whole week-long thing. I think it's like 7 or 8 days long. I actually thought it was 5 days. I think this one was like 7 days straight of just like 12 hours a day, just grilling through all the ins and outs of dog training. And the the thing I really liked about it is it seems like a lot of the people that went to it are people that were at the last one and the one before, and they basically have like signed up for this kind of apprenticeship program, and they truly apprentice under him. But they own their businesses, but they apprentice under him. So once a year they could have this like crash course into things.
Okay.
And it was really awesome. And the first thing that was like really, really cool to me was as soon as we got there, one, everyone was wonderful, super, super nice, great place. They really have an awesome business going on up there. But a bunch of people were coming up to me and just, you know, hey, we love your content, regular listeners of the podcast, you know, things like that. It was cool because like this was the first time we really went like out of our territory, not just for like a single lesson like we did with Chicago or like, you know, some of the other like travel training things that we've done, like, but to truly go to a new place and spend like a prolonged period of time and work with a lot of different people, you know, outside of our territory.
Yep.
And I didn't know what to expect going into it, you know, and just the warmth and like I don't even know the right words for it.
Yeah.
But just how much we were like accepted while we were up there, and how much people were just so genuinely like appreciative of like the work we've done, and you know, some of the people were just like acknowledging like how much we've helped them, and it was just, you know, it's hard to put into words how cool it was. You know. There were a couple of times, couple of conversations I had with specific people out there that were just like very moving conversations of them just talking about how we've been able to impact, you know, what they're doing. So
let's go.
Super, super cool. So the apprenticeship program, that was a long fucking day, man.
Yeah.
We got there at, I think 9. We were there till like 6:30, maybe 9 to 6:30 and straight. There was like a 20-minute little lunch break in the middle, but outside of that, it was just like boom, boom, boom. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing this, we're doing that.
Damn.
Big Q&A section, big training dog section, you know, like socialization section, you know, more Q&A at the end. I mean, it was just non-fucking. I was whooped by the end of it. And then we went out for dinner and drinks with everybody after, and that was awesome. Then Saturday, same deal. Lesson in the morning, great 2-hour-long lesson. That video will be going live Monday, I believe, with this German short-haired pointer that I don't want to call it an aggressive dog, but like a really, really out of control, fearful dog that has the propensity for aggression, we'll say. You know?
Okay.
And that session, it was one of those sessions where when you're doing it, all the stars are kind of aligning. Everything's working out kind of exactly how you want it to work out. You know what I mean? That one was really, 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 really cool. It was actually a trainer that hired us for it. It's a client of theirs that they've done good work with this dog up until this point, but they were just struggling overcoming some of these last little hurdles, you know? And they actually brought the client with them, like the owners of the dog, and we all just kind of worked through the issues, you know, and gave them some good pointers of things to work on and stuff. It went phenomenal. We had a business consult, then a 2-hour business consult with another dog training company in Ontario. Then after we met up at a restaurant, 2 hours of just really helping them get into the weeds of where they're at in their kind of development of their business, how to continue growing it. It's just the variety of everything we worked at. It was just so cool, you know? Later that day, then we met up with another group of like 3 dog professionals, and we same deal. We went and got some drinks and all got together and just had an awesome time, just hanging out and just talking dogs.
Yeah,
you know, it was just like when people say like networking, you know, it really was just like going up there and just networking, but also just like having a really good time.
Yeah.
So
well, this sounds cool too because there were so many different aspects of this business that you got to like be a part of.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just like the normal seminar. You go talk for like 3 hours and it's over, you know?
Well, the seminar was only one day too.
Yeah.
You know, everything else we did outside of that was like unrelated to the seminar, just stuff that we booked and like filled our time with.
Yep.
And like I said, there were 2 other dogs we were supposed to work with too. Like we were supposed to have another lesson on Saturday. I was supposed to have basically 4 different things on Saturday. There was supposed to be another one with a client that I recently saw in Cleveland who has like a working line German Shepherd and really intense dog. Has actually worked with Shield Canine up in Canada, which is obviously a very well-known, reputable company, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, nothing against Shield by any means. They did a phenomenal job training this dog, but they don't really like. Not a lot of training companies have this approach to socialization, you know, that I feel like us and somewhere like Canine Academy and stuff like that does, which is like recognizing and understanding that the actual interactions with other dogs is like a really important thing, you know? So it's just not something they did. So she was trying to seek out, like, how can she help this dog overcome some of its socialization hurdles because it was having issues with that. So she came and she spent, 3 hours in Cleveland. She lives part-time in Toronto, part-time in Buffalo, or Rochester, I believe. Rochester and Toronto, right? So she came, spent some time here, and we booked a session to work with her while we were up in Toronto also. And she texted me, and it was actually a great text because she said, she thought she was going to be back in Toronto like around that time. It turns out she was still in Rochester. But, she was like, the session we did socializing, really helped like connect the last few dots that she needed to connect anyways. And, she was having a lot of progress and stuff with it. So,
yeah, you were probably like, okay.
Yeah.
I could breathe.
And then the last one we were supposed to do on Sunday morning before we drove home with a client, introducing an e-collar to their dog for the first time. And she wound up having some medical issues and needed to cancel at last minute. So we're going to do that virtually instead.
There you go.
But it was a really awesome trip. But it was really busy. But it was awesome. It's funny, like Kate came up with us, know? And like, I think originally even I kind of thought like, we're going to do some work, but like, we'll go explore Toronto. Like, kind of treat it like a mini like vacation / work trip.
Yeah.
There was none of that.
None of that.
There was like, in between lessons, it's like quickly, I'm like, Paige, look up somewhere we can get some food at.
Yeah, quickly.
Find somewhere quick,
Yeah.
So it was cool. And there's a ton of content that's going to be getting posted from that. Paige is obviously just shifting through all of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, how was their facility?
So they have 2 facilities.
Really?
This is one that they're kind of in like a hybrid period with. So like, they've had it for a year, but they haven't done a lot to it because they're going to be moving to another facility, I believe.
Okay.
So it was a big place.
Yeah.
But they didn't really like deck it out yet or anything like that. It was just kind of a basic, basic warehouse space. That's
cool.
So I think their other one is supposed to be really nice. Yeah, like I said, they got an awesome operation up there. It was cool because anytime you go and do seminars, this is something that you kind of realize. I realized this the first couple of seminars that I did where I went to like somebody's training facility or whatever. Everybody has their own spin on things.
Yep.
And I think that initially it could be a little bit nerve-wracking going somewhere like that if you know that there's some things you do a little bit differently than other people, you know? Like, I know that there are some differences as far as like how we view, socialization, for example, right? But we could both respect the hell out of each other for it because we both get great results.
Yep.
We got different spins on it, but we both know what we're doing. We overcome issues and we have the best intentions in mind, and it's great, you know? But navigating that, when you go to a place like that and being courteous and mindful of not like stepping on toes and trying to like make sure that you're not like saying things in a way where you're like making it seem like what they're doing is wrong or vice versa is always a game that you gotta kind of play anytime you're doing that kind of stuff. It was just cool. Like I said, I'm just kind of rambling about the trip right now, but it was an awesome trip. We had such a great time, and it was really, really cool. Like I said, to see kind of the impact that we've been able to have on people up there.
Yeah. So, and what's his name again?
The owner of the business, Anesh.
Anesh, yeah. Yeah, shout out
Academy. Shout out Canine Academy Toronto. If you're up that way and you are looking for, socialization, stuff like that, I absolutely recommend you get in touch with them. I think that they're like I said, they're doing fantastic work. So
yeah. That's
cool. So that kind of segues into like, what are some things that I really noticed up there, right? What are some things, because I worked with a lot of professionals while I was up there. Obviously, I had a couple clients I worked with, but the large bulk of the work that I did while I was up there was connecting with other dog professionals or working with dog professionals with their dogs.
Yeah.
Right? So it opened my eyes to some things that I think are still really big problems in the dog world. Right. Okay. And I'll kind of walk through some of those types of things. So, and again, all of this will make sense as we post more videos from the trip, but I'll walk you guys through a lot of it. Right. So historically, the dog training world has this view on training that is basically control the dog at all times, never allow the dog to make mistakes. Right. And I call it like kind of micromanage everything with the dog always. Right.
Yeah.
And I would say that is something that I really, really saw a lot of when I was up there, right? From the very first lesson I did with the client that hired me. This isn't even a dog professional at this point, but somebody who had done extensive training with their dog. She had her issues she was struggling with still were the fact that she was needing to micromanage every move that the dog was making still, right? The dog was behaving itself, but the only reason why the dog was behaving itself is because the owner did not give the dog the option to not behave itself, right?
Okay.
And some people can look at that and they could say, well, isn't that what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to set the dog up for success, right? You're supposed to never, allow them to rehearse these unwanted behaviors, stuff like that. To which I always say kind of, right? In the early teaching stages of things, yes, I want to keep the dog successful. I want to help navigate all of their decisions so that they're learning what success kind of feels like and stuff. But at some point, if we look at the North Star of dog training, which I say all the time, which is that we can micromanage the dog as little as possible, that we can make sure that the dog understands how to make good decisions on its own, right? And that ultimately the dog is very, very clear in understanding what it is that we want out of them. That does not align with that, right?
Okay.
So basically, if you watch the video, the first thing I did with this client when I went up there was I was like, all right, I want to see where we're at with stuff. Let's go for this walk and you show me what you're talking about. And she lived in a very populated area, tons of dogs around, stuff like that. So we just went for a walk and I watched her. And the whole time she was walking this dog, she was kind of nagging the dog to stay in position this way, nagging him this way. She would see another dog and she'd start doing this like body blocking and leash blocking, like doing all this stuff, right? And it kind of worked, but it also was creating a lot of frustration between the dog and her. She wasn't really enjoying her walks because of how much work she needed to do ultimately. Yeah. And the dog was still getting frustrated and getting a little reactive sometimes because of probably all the micromanagement and not having a clear enough understanding of the expectations, right? So, and this is funny, we got a comment on it where somebody was watching the video, and basically this is somebody that had asked questions in the past about correcting for reactivity and how much freedom you give the dog and, where you use commands and where you don't use the commands and stuff like that. And to the outside eye, when they watch the video that we posted of working with the dog, it kind of seemed like I was doing all of the things that I had said previously not to do, which basically was don't ask the dog to do anything, right? And just correct the dog for reactivity is kind of what he was asking, if that was a clear way. Whatever.
Okay.
So it was hard to explain this via comment, but I did tell him that I was going to kind of talk a little bit about this here. When you're working with clients, particularly when you're working with clients that you're not going to see very frequently, like this lady I saw for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Right. I'm probably not going to see her again. She may do a virtual follow-up or something like that with me. But for the most part, I had an hour and a half to look at her situation and see what are the things that I could have her do that are going to give her or heed her the most results in the shortest period of time. Right. And because she was so extreme with the micromanagement of everything that she was doing, I was really, really trying to drill home this concept to her of allowing the dog choice. Right? Allowing the dog to make decisions of what he was going to do or not going to do in order to correct them. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that we're not giving the dog any sort of direction. But what that means is that when we're asking the dog to do different things, before you jump right in and start trying to get the dog to be successful or helping the dog or blocking the dog or doing any of those types of things, make sure the dog has made a choice to do the thing that you're asking them to do or not do the thing that you're asking them to do.
Yeah.
Right? And this was a common thing that I was coaching all of these trainers through when I was up there.
Yeah.
Right? Not all of them. I was obviously, but these were a lot of the questions that they were having were pertaining to this exact concept.
Yeah.
Right?
That makes sense.
So this particular client, I was really drilling home, like wait for fully committed mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? Not just like he's thinking about getting out of position. Wait until he is committed to, like he's definitely not in position anymore, right? When she was asking for a command or whatever it may be, right? Wait and make sure this dog is totally committed to not doing that thing before you give any direction. And by loosening up our parameters like that and increasing the intensity of the consequences we were providing for not listening to the things that we were asking them to do or not performing the way we wanted to perform, what we would find is that these dogs consistently just got the message, got it much more clearly, and understood that the training or the things we were asking of them ultimately was a winnable game, right? It was a thing that they could do and they could perform correctly, and then they could alleviate all of the micromanagement and stress that came from it.
Yeah.
Right? So that was the first thing I realized is when I worked with them was exactly that concept. And again, lots of videos that are going to be coming out. Another one that you're going to see was the exact same thing, but we were doing it with a beagle with a trainer that was at this seminar, right? Okay. So he had this beagle and they were telling me basically, this beagle, it's a client of his, I believe, right? The dog is obviously extremely anxious, right? The dog is your typical beagle where you take it outside, gets really overstimulated and fixated on stuff, very prey driven, stuff like that. And the problem was that they were finding that when they were correcting this dog, the dog was jumping up and trying to bite them, redirecting, almost intensifying with his issues, which are things we hear all the time from people, right?
Yep.
So same deal. We go outside. I'm like, all right, show me what's going on with this dog, right? So start having him walk the dog. Same deal. Looking good, right? The dog's walking pretty well, but a lot of little nudge here, nudge there, a little correction there, a little repeated command there. You know what I mean? Just like constant guidance being given to this dog.
Yeah.
And then my assumption is they were constantly giving guidance to this dog to stop this dog from making these little mistakes with just like the general expectation of things. And then when the dog would really escalate or intensify, then they started trying to crack down on the dog over stuff. And it was just pissing him off and causing the redirecting, right?
Yep.
So I was like, all right, give me the leash, right? So I showed him exact same concept. Let's start by having one clear expectation we could ask of the dog. In this case, it was the come command, right? Stay in my bubble like we do with all of them, right? Let's wait for him to fully commit to breaking come command, right? Or not doing position. And then we're going to give that similar level of intensity correction that you would give for the actual reactivity you were seeing, but give it before you ever see it. Give it just for the non-compliance of that command, right? We did that maybe 3 times, 4 times, I don't know, something like that. And then this dog proceeded to walk literally perfectly for the rest of the walk. You know what I mean? Like just like one teeny tiny little fix.
Yeah, just finally
teeny tiny little fix.
Finally clicked for it.
Right?
Yeah.
Looser parameters, more firm accountability for non-compliance of those parameters. We sidestepped all of the reactivity. We saw there were some geese that previously it sounded like the day before he was really reacting at a lot, right? He was walking close by other dogs and stuff. Like he just like the shift in his state of mind went from just still frantic to calm.
Yeah.
Right. A little stress still, right? It's a new expectation that we're holding him to, but all those problems that we were seeing before, we were not seeing with him.
Yeah.
Right. So where was I going? I was going to say something a second ago. I'm trying to remember what it was. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we then, we go back in the facility, we're talking about it, this, that, and I was getting questions about, the redirecting. What do I do if he redirects, this, that, just kind of asking a lot of these like hypothetical questions of the situation, asking why the dog was so poorly behaved before, why he seemed like he was doing so well in this one, all that kind of stuff. And that's where I get to. A lot of people ask me about like redirecting, right? Or a lot of people ask me about like, well, the correction intensifies the behavior, right? And I always remind people that I almost never will see that consistently unless the dog has no idea how to avoid successfully the consequence.
Yeah.
Right. In this case, the dog was redirecting and the dog was intensifying with the corrections because the corrections were not clear.
Yeah.
Right. Let's look at the standard heel position a lot of people try to enforce, and they pop, 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 pop every time the dog starts getting a little out of position. I ask people this all the time. Do you really, truly, honestly believe that your dog understands that when they get 3 inches ahead of you versus 2 inches ahead of you, or 6 inches ahead of you instead of 4 inches ahead of you, that is where the correction is coming? To which I would always argue, absolutely not.
No.
I don't think so at all. So what happens if you repeatedly correct the dog, which is what we generally do when we're teaching heel position, right? Or a lot of trainers generally do when they're teaching heel position. What happens when you repeatedly give the dog a correction that they don't know how to avoid? They try to figure out other ways to make the correction go away, right? In their mind, I can't win this game. The correction is not, I don't know how to make this correction go away. That creates stress, that creates frustration, that creates redirecting. And then generally we see the redirecting and we're like, whoa!
Where'd that come from?
And then we stop.
Yeah.
So this little tweak caused him to finally realize that he had control over the correction.
Yep.
Right? So that's another thing that we saw with that dog. Really cool, The walk it's just consistently when I work with people, one of those places that I feel people can't get under control, because they look at it too much like it's a position thing, right? Where I always say the walk is not, it's not a position thing, it's like there's a picture we can create in our head of what we want it to look like, but like, where is that picture coming from? Like, why is the dog organically walking in a heel position, right? Why does it look like when people look at our videos, they're like, oh yeah, you obviously taught a heel position because it looks like the dog's walking there. To which I always say, it's because the walk is about attention, right? And by waiting for the dog to make committed mistakes, we are waiting until they lose attention and we correct for it. And if a dog is maintaining constant attention on you, where would be the easiest place for them to maintain constant attention on you? Probably somewhere that looks pretty similar to a heel position.
Yeah.
Right? Or slightly behind you.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think the other day of, and again, I have allergy brain right now, so I'm going all over the place, right? But I was trying to think of the other day, like, ways to like continue articulating some of this stuff better, And I almost hate even telling people that the walking is like a position, because like, really the correction is not for that, right? Like it really is for the attention, to which it's like, you got to ask yourself, like, the correction you're giving is for like, who's the dog following? Yeah. Are you following the dog or is the dog following you? It's very Cesar Millan-esque, but like it is true where like if the dog is heeling with you, the dog is actively following you. So when do you correct? If it's not about a position, you correct when you start following the dog. Right?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, even if it's the dog's in the heel position, but it's just going,
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, because like I look at like where I generally will give a correction. I try to wait until I've lost the dog, and when I've lost the dog, generally speaking, what that is like if I start slowing down, the dog is still going forward. To which, if I were still walking in that moment, I would be following the dog. The dog is not following me, or else when I stopped, they would stop as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. So that was something else that I saw consistently up there, was a lot of tweaks to walking. I think that because we're so used to micromanaging our dogs so much, our level of compliance that we have over our dogs in general, or that trainers are having over their dogs, is not as good as they think it is. There were a lot of people that I worked with both within the seminar as well as outside of the seminar, that were telling me about problems they were having pertaining to like anxiety or this or that, right? Or places where they didn't, the dog was a little too wound up or whatever. And every single time I took them out, I was like, all right, well, just work the dog for a minute. And I would watch them work the dog, or I would say like, all right, do a come command right now. And I was consistently finding that their level of compliance, they could get their dog to do it, but they were needing to give some reminders here, give some reminders there. Or another big one we'll see is, the very first rep you ask of the dog, they'll give a little bit of help with because they're like, oh, he's not in training mode yet. And then once they get in training mode, then they start holding the dog accountable consistently to the very first command. Okay. So that was another thing we were coaching people through a lot. Like one girl had a dog, that same deal. She just would get a little too spun up in his head, and we kind of let the dog get a little bit spun up and get a little loose. And I said, all right, well, give a come command, and she gave a come command, and the dog kind of did it and then blew right past her. Right. And then I believe she went to then go give another come command, right? Which is obviously a place we would just give a correction for. Yeah. So it's like, all right, well, obviously when your dog gets into a really elevated state of mind, you could get the dog back to you. Obviously you just showed me, but the level of compliance you have like on a dime of your dog is not perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if you're struggling with your dog, you need to be able to get some of that stuff to a place where it is pretty much perfect.
Yeah.
When you ask it down, no matter where, no matter when, it needs to be immediate and it needs to be without the need of any corrections. That's how you know that you truly have taught your stuff to the caliber that you need to have it taught to.
Yeah.
100%. So yeah, stuff like that, right? Level of compliance issues is something I see a lot. With, forget just this trip, but just in general, right? I think a lot of people don't have as much control over their dogs as possible because they're constantly micromanaging them. I think they're not putting the dogs in a position where they're allowing choice enough, right? They're trying to prevent the dog from making the mistakes as opposed to allowing the dog to make the mistakes and learn from them and then be past them. A lot of people are also getting too hung up on just anxiety, right? Or not having a clear picture in their head of what the problem is, right? Okay. So as I'm going through with each of the clients, I'm like, what do you want some help with? What do you want some help with? What do you want some help with? And I was consistently hearing with people, oh, I want to work on my dog's anxiety. It's like, okay, we could do that. But what does that mean?
Yeah, that's like such a blanket statement.
Saying I want to work on my dog's anxiety. Or another one is I want to work on my dog's confidence, right? Or things like that. I think people are using those words so loosely where they don't have a picture in their head of what is actually wrong.
Yeah, it's such a broad statement.
Yes, right? Like one of them, I think, said, I want to work on my dog's anxiety. So I start digging in. Where is the anxiety at its worst? What does the dog do when it gets anxious? What's your level of control you have over the dog? Stuff like that, right? And turns out that this dog gets anxious, but when it gets anxious, it starts getting a little bit of like stranger danger issues, right? And getting a little reactive when like people are walking by or like trying to engage with the dog or things like that. So, okay, cool. That's a more clear goal that we could get to the bottom of and figure out what we need to do, right?
Yeah.
Or the forever game of wanting to build confidence. There's a woman up there that had a pot cake that she did training with as well. And she was training with K9 Academy, and they did an incredible job with this dog. This dog, from what they were telling me, was a mess when they first met it. Anxious, reactive, like biting, like just like not a very good, well-behaved dog. And she's like, I want to work on this dog's confidence. So I was like, all right, take the dog out, right? Takes the dog out. I'm like, all right, work the dog a little bit. And I'm looking, I was like, this dog looks fantastic. I was like, I literally don't even see a problem here. I was like, where's the issue? She's like, oh, well, just like with new people, the dog, isn't confident around new people. I was like, I'm a new person.
Yeah.
She's like, well, yeah, you haven't tried to interact with the dog or anything yet. I was like, that's because I know that to build this dog's confidence around new people, this dog needs to continue to have experiences being around people and being reassured that they're not a threat, right?
Yeah.
So kind of meeting the dog halfway, and seeing like where the dog is at, I think, and what that dog needs to be successful is also a big overlooked key, accepting who the dog is a little bit. Like, okay, the dog clearly is telling you that it doesn't like when people interact with them. I was like, what does the dog do? Like, does he bite or anything? She's like, no, he just kind of gets a little weird and a little shy and like tries to get away. I was like, he's not doing anything wrong. No. There's nothing to work on aside from build successful repetitions around people in a way that's going to help actually boost his confidence by making sure that there's no scary things actually happening to them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's not like a detrimental thing. It doesn't have to be just your way. Like you said, you can meet the dog halfway with that because it's not a detrimental problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like so much of this stuff, it's like less is more, you know, or another person's dog, you know, they said, you know, we have anxiety issues, right? And the, you know, it was like, what's the anxiety issue? Well, the dog kind of follows me around and paces, and they were getting into a habit of every time the dog would do that, they would try to like shoo the dog away, right? Or tell the dog to stop or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And all they were doing was feeding into it. They were creating a game out of all of it and perpetuating the anxiety, you know? So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could ramble all day about it, obviously, but like there was just a lot of little things like that is of just not accepting their dogs, you know, not having clear enough, you know, expectations as far as what it was that's actually the issue with things, not enough decision making, you know, that they were allowing the dog to make, and being a little too micromanagey over stuff. It really just being up there kind of opened my eyes to like those are big issues in the dog world, you know, as a whole. And I'm not, because like I said, I know a lot of those people said they listen to the podcast, right? So I'm not picking on anybody, obviously, in this or anything like that. And I think if anything, it should be eye-opening to a lot of them of like how good of a job they've been doing with their dogs. And that sometimes you got to kind of take a step back and like smell the roses a little bit and accept how far the dog has come with things. And in this like chase for perfection of getting a more confident dog and a less anxious dog and stuff like that, sometimes you forget to like really calibrate who the dog is at their baseline, like what their home base is with things, and just be like okay with your dog being at home base of maybe a little bit anxious sometimes, maybe a little fearful sometimes, as long as it's not turning into an actual problem. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
So that was cool. That was my biggest eye openings from the seminar. The business consult I did was fantastic as well. That was a really cool one to like, you know, I do business consults with people a lot, and usually it's getting into training things or helping to like improve on their knowledge with those types of things.
Yeah.
Where this one was really cool because it wasn't a lot of that. Like these people have been doing a great job with the training. It truly was like helping them like get from, they both work full-time jobs, but part-time trained dogs.
Okay.
Right. And, they're making good money off of it and everything. And they're just not really sure how to get it to the next level where they truly can like quit their jobs, do this full time and stuff. So we really were able to get into the weeds of that. And again, we filmed that as well. We'll kind of break that one up a little bit and find little segments that we're able to post without, you know, getting too into obviously their business with stuff online.
For sure.
But yeah, it was a good trip. So that was Toronto.
Awesome. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, that was Toronto.
Yeah,
I am really excited to start sharing a lot of the content from it, though.
Yeah,
you know, I think it's a little overdue of having some like really unique problem solving things, and you know, with us doing one-on-ones at the facility and spending so much time with clients, we could avoid a lot of the coaching things we need to do of like tweaks like this because we're instilling a lot of these habits right off the rip. You know, like the decision making, like with this dog we worked with in the very first lesson we did, the video that we posted, you know, that dog had done so much training already and the owners had done so much training already that we're basically taking this like trained dog with an owner that knows how to use training, but also like has some like bad habits she needs to break. So coaching them through that, we're coaching like a human dog combo through things that are in such a different place than if I worked somebody through a 10-session program. And early on in things, I could instill some of these habits of the decision making and, you know, not micromanaging and stuff like that. Where by the time the dog gets to a point where they're going to be doing the things that like this dog was doing, like going into really busy parks and stuff like that, it's usually a much more kind of seamless, smooth transition. So there's not as much to catch on video.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Where the session can be a little bit more redundant then because it's like we're just reiterating things that the client already knows at that point.
Yeah, and you're just drilling the same thing.
We're just kind of drilling the same thing over and over, where this was like we're breaking bad habits, you know? And the difference between building somebody up from like green to like where they need to be versus breaking bad habits. You know, you have to coach them through things in such a different way.
Yeah.
You know, which is why in her case, like I was saying, like I was totally overcompensating on like loosening everything up.
Yeah.
You know, where it almost to a fault, like you could hit a point with that where you get too loose then.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that was interesting. So did that in Toronto. Done some travel training. Yesterday I was in Chillicothe all day working with 3 clients that I have. Yeah, down south, just past Columbus.
Yep.
That was really cool. One of the dogs in particular I worked with was a board and train Bridget recently did that wound up moving down there. They adopted the dog. The dog came straight to us before they picked up the dog. Obviously, we did the board and train, then sent the dog home. And it was kind of a little bit of a tough cookie Rottweiler, too. Like one that was like a little concerning initially of like, man, you guys are trying to home this dog out? Like this dog's a handful, right?
Yeah.
And they just couldn't have found better owners for this dog.
That's
awesome.
Awesome.
They just were on top of it. The dog's living his best life right now. Like went really good. The other 2 clients, same deal, just follow-ups up there, going really well. I was in Toledo on Tuesday working with a client, some fighting dogs. Really good session as well, helping them to, there's so many ways to approach dogs fighting with each other. Like these ones, for example, right? These dogs, this is my second time that I was out there working with them. Toledo's only like an hour and a half, hour, 40 minutes from us. So my second time working with them, I went out there the first time and we're working with the dogs. And the first step was kind of, let's break the bad habits that the owners have that are causing these fights, right? So we kind of did that initially. And I was out there for like an hour and a half, and we get like an hour and a half into things. Things are going really, really well. I'm coaching them through all their things that they need to adjust and stuff. And then we're like sitting on the couch and, we go to stand up, and as soon as we stand up, it was like, boom, these dogs freaking went ham. Like,
damn.
They had muzzles on, obviously, but
but still.
Like really, really going at each other. Like it was like a switch flick. Like they were like good to like boom. Like they were trying to fucking kill each other, know? And even though they were muzzled, like these 2 dogs were fighting so intense, like breaking them apart was like hard because they had so much intensity behind it and stuff. So we're like, all right, here's what we're going to do, right? For the next like 3 weeks or so, 3 or 4 weeks, because I was going to come back out there, obviously. For the next 3 or 4 weeks, let's not worry too much about integrating them with each other. All these things we've been working on over the last hour and a half of like the things that are causing the fights, like controlling the arousal, controlling the affection and resources. They had a 3rd dog in the house that was a little bit out of control, that needed some training, that probably was adding to things. I was like, let's work with all this stuff for a little bit, right? So they did that. They took the ball and ran with it, man. It was like great. Like I went back there Tuesday and, these dogs looked noticeably different. Nice. They hadn't been together again, right? Yeah. But they looked noticeably different as far as like their level of compliance, their arousal, right? How respectful that they were being. The owners were really mindful of making sure they weren't smothering them with affection and stuff. Like they did a really great job of that. So I was like, all right, we're putting these dogs back together again today, but we're not doing this thing where it takes an hour and a half to have another fucking explode. Like we know that these dogs are going to do this again.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was like, we're getting it out of the way. We're getting it out of the way and we're getting it under control.
Okay.
And we did the same thing. We had a little bit more preparation to it because the last time, like I was almost surprised. Like I knew that it's not like I didn't believe the owners, obviously, but like we got like an hour and a half in and the dogs were doing well. Right. Yeah. It was like very specific triggers of like standing up created a lot of arousal and things like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, we're simulating anything we can to just get this out of the way. Like if the dogs are going to fight, I want them to fight right now so I can address it. Right.
Yeah.
So set some stuff up, did some things, like 30 minutes into the lesson. Finally, I see the one dog starting to like, to like get to that point where he's thinking about doing it.
Yeah.
So we drill that situation. Then suddenly, boom, same deal. He went for him intensely as shit. We were prepared for it. We were able to correct it super firmly right there and then, right?
Yep.
I think it was a bonker e-collar combo, right? Corrected it really, really, really firmly. And then for the next like hour and a half, we just put these dogs in every possible situation that we could.
Yep.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Zero. Like they absolutely learned their lesson from it.
Yeah.
Right. And that was massive. Like we left it and at the end, the woman was like, she was like, oh my God. She's like, you know, because I corrected these dogs pretty hard, you know, like I wanted, like, if this is going to happen, let's let it happen now and let's get it under control.
Yeah.
Right. So she was like, yeah, she's like, you know, they started fighting and then, yeah, you corrected them. And she's like, as soon as I heard you say no and give that correction, she was like, and I was kind of expecting oh, I felt really bad, or, you know, like something like that to come out. She's like, as soon as I heard the dog getting corrected, she's like, I was so happy that we finally caught it, you know? Because like she knows a lot about training. She's done a lot of training with these dogs before, you know? She knows a decent amount about training and stuff like that, but they've just never been prepared to catch it, you know? Because I think a lot of times we have fighting dogs like this, we learn how to live around the dog a little bit. Yeah. You know?
100%.
And we know what the triggers are. We know how to avoid them just enough where it's like never turns into a big problem. But it's like you could only avoid it for so long. You know? So we know what's going to happen eventually. So instead of me just waiting for it to willy-nilly pop up somewhere and being so ill-prepared and not being able to capitalize on it, I was like, we are going to set it up and we're going to get past it when we're ready to get past it. Yeah. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And that's... That was a massive breakthrough with those dogs too. You know? So that was a good session. You know, I know things are going pretty well. So I mean, it's only been a couple of days, but you know, they had strict instructions on how to recreate that same thing again. Because a lot of times, usually what happens is I'll do it. The dogs develop the association of around me. They don't do that. But then, you know, inevitably they're still going to try it at some point for the owner. So I told him, I was like, you're going to have to do this over the next couple of days, set this scenario up every day, you know, for the next 2 days, next 3 days. And same deal. You're going to probably run into the same situation where you got to do the same thing I did. And then the dogs will learn that the same rules apply with you around. And that's going to be a big breakthrough for them as well. I've got a call scheduled with them here soon to just touch base on how things are going with that. But that was a really great session to see also. This morning I had a freaking awesome I mean, it was a busy fucking week. We trained a lot of dogs over the last week and a half, but it was just like a good week. I had a follow-up session with a dog today who did some training with her dog previously, like years and years ago, right? And just fell off the wagon, like an ex of hers, like basically like, you know, just didn't like doing the train. Like convinced her to basically just not do anything for like 3 years, right?
Oh, great.
They broke up, right? Turns out, and this was kind of funny, right? So when she called initially to schedule the follow up, she did a board and train with us, like probably like 4 or 5 years ago. Like it was a while, right? Wow. And she was like, yeah, you know, we just got to get back in the groove of things. You know, we're having some issues, this, that. She's like, yeah. I was like, all right, well, like, you know, like what, you know, what, like. She said something. I was like, what caused you to fall off? And she was like, well, you know, like my ex that I was with, you know, really just, he just didn't like the training. And usually I was like, well, okay, well, why? You know, and because usually when people tell me, you know, my significant other didn't like the training, it's like they don't want to use the e-collar or something like that, right? She threw me a curveball with it. She's like, well, you know, he was kind of like ex-military or something like that, like law enforcement or something. And just like, you know, really thought that like the way that that he didn't believe that there was any way the Miracle Canine training system was going to work. And that you have to train dogs by, you know, asserting dominance and pinning them and like hitting them and stuff. And I'm just like, whoa.
Jesus.
I literally stopped her on the phone. I was like, that's a curveball.
Yeah, excuse me.
I was like, I'm fully expecting you to be like, well, like we were just too soft on the dog. But in actuality, it's like you had the polar opposite. Yeah. Like, what the hell?
Guy had to be heavy-handed. Okay.
Yeah. And obviously it didn't work.
No.
Right? So we had a session this morning, actually, mid-dying of allergies. Like I woke up this morning and it was like, so horrendous. I'm actually like, I feel like my 17,000 allergy meds I took are like kind of kicking in a little bit now, but it was so bad. And I remember I like met with her. I stopped by her house. I was like, apologies in advance. I'm like literally dying right now. Right.
Yeah.
So whatever. So she hadn't even put the e-collar on this dog in years. Right. Had it all charged up, had it ready to go, popped it on the dog. All we needed to do with this freaking dog. She was just having some like anxiety issues and some like reactivity issues. But again, anxiety, like, The dog wasn't even really anxious. The dog was just out of control. It got anxious, and when it got anxious, if she would leave the house, the dog would just like bark incessantly. When the dog got anxious, it just jumped all over me and would just claw me the whole time, right?
Yeah.
And then out on the walk, if it got anxious, it would like pull and try to like chase squirrels and like do stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So whatever. We put the e-collar on. We immediately stopped the jumping. We set up the leaving the house and correct the barking. Corrected this dog like 3 times. The dog's like, got it, right? Went outside to go for a walk. Tightened up the leash walking just a little bit, corrected for some of the pulling and stuff. We go to the park, and as we're walking to the park, we're going to Edgewater. She's like, I always really had these goals of like having this dog off leash. She's like, do you think that's possible? Like that's cool. I was like, yeah, there shouldn't be any reason why we can't get this dog off leash. Like the dog really wasn't that poorly behaved.
Yeah,
Just needed a little bit of impulse control. So we get to Edgewater, and the dog did so well with the walk up there. The dog was ignoring every distraction we passed by. I was like, let the dog off leash. Like, just do it, let's do it. She's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. Clip that leash off. Dude, we were at Edgewater for like a half an hour. This dog's having the fucking time of its life off leash. Slade was so happy. She was just so happy to just see, like, one, the dog didn't forget anything, like all that money you spent 4 or 5 years ago, it didn't go down the drain. The dog still remembers everything.
Yeah.
She even said at one point, she's like, I am just so happy seeing how happy my dog is right now. Just living its best life.
Hell yeah.
And all it took was just a little bit of consistency.
Yep.
In 1 hour, we went from literally haven't used training with this dog in like 4 years to the dog off leash at the park having a fucking blast.
Yeah.
Again, just fucking, I keep saying it, fucking cool. Good session.
Yeah, that's cool. Love it.
So, all sorts of stuff.
Nothing but good tidings this week for you.
Nothing but good. And you guys might listen to this episode and not really get anything out of it. I don't know, because I'm just kind of rambling about good lessons that I had.
Yeah, just updating.
This is like an update episode. If everybody had one if I'd give people one takeaway from this episode though, because it does apply to every single situation that I just talked about.
Okay.
Have a more clear expectation of your dog, right? Meaning what you expect out of them. Right. If you feel like there are things wrong, dig and ask questions until you get to the actual root of what is actually wrong. Stop saying things like, my dog's anxious. My dog's fearful. You know what I mean? Like, stop saying those things. Focus on why is that a problem in that moment. And I'm not saying like it's not a problem that your dog is anxious. Yes, I would like for your dogs to be less anxious.
Yes.
I would like for your dogs to be less fearful, right?
Yeah.
But I know that will come by eliminating the conflict that you're having with the dog because you don't have a clear picture of what is actually wrong, which is causing the dog to perpetually be like that and never be able to recover from it.
Yep. No structure.
So that's thing number 1, clear expectation. Thing number 2, loosen up on your dogs a little bit. And when I say that, I mean, let your dog start making decisions. Don't stop your dog from making decisions. Gary Wilkes made a post the other day that I don't fully agree with, but I think the root of it is correct.
Okay.
In a nutshell, basically what he said is, oh, you fucking, because, Gary says everything in the most brash way possible. He's like, oh, you fucking people, that everybody coaches people to like, keep their puppy on a leash all the time in the house and this and that. And he's like, that, nothing exposes you as not knowing anything more than that and whatever, Okay, listen, with puppies, yes, you want to manage the dog and control the mistakes they're making so you're not correcting them for everything all at once. Right? Exactly. So using a leash is okay with your puppy. Right?
Yes.
But the root of it that he was saying was, why is he saying that? He's saying that because if you have your puppy on a leash all the time and you literally don't even let it make any mistakes, not even control some of them, but you don't let it make any mistakes ever, sure, you're going to have this picture that the dog is behaved, right? But the second you take away the micromanagement or the restraint or whatever it may be, the dog's going to rehearse all of those things.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're going to be in square one where it's like, either I have to do all this work managing this dog 24/7 all the time, or I could stop the problems.
Yep.
Right?
Leave the leash on forever.
Right. You have to leave the leash on forever then. Or constantly puppy proof your house or like do those types of things.
Yeah.
Right? So let your dog start making some decisions.
Yeah.
Right? And then instead of nagging the dog constantly to manage them, let the dog make decisions and give more firm of consequences for the decisions and get past them. And I'm telling you guys, it's going to go better.
Yeah, what's that term? Helicopter mom. Don't helicopter mom your dogs.
Helicopter mom your dogs.
Yeah. Let them make the decisions. The right decisions.
That's right. So that's what we got. So
cool.
As these videos come out, ask questions, right? The content you're going to see, it might be a little different than you're used to seeing as far as the actual training I'm doing. Because like I said, it's a different animal, right? I'm not working with a client for 10 weeks where I could build them up from green.
Yeah.
You know, I'm meeting them where they're at, which is they've already been given a lot of knowledge, right? And I'm needing to tweak that knowledge in a gentle but firm manner.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I think
so it's going to be a little different, and keep that in mind. And some of the things I might be saying in it or doing or whatever it may be might seem a little bit like that sounds different than what he said in the past. But keep in mind that the reason it's coming across that way is because I'm needing to figure out ways to help these clients adjust what they're already doing and overcompensate for some of the areas that they have bad habits already in. You know?
Yep.
So
cool.
And then obviously, as always, ask questions.
Please keep them coming.
What do we got here? Perfect. We're going to end that on that.
All right.
All right, guys.
We'll see you
Catch you on the next one.
See you next time.